So right now we are starting with the basics of Linux. Okay. So before going further, so I'll start with what is Unix and what is Linux actually. So Unix is an operating system. This is an open source operating system. Actually, it was developed by Sun Solaris earlier team. So where they wanted to implement some things which was not possible by the existing operating systems. So the based on the same kernel. So based on the same kernel, Linux was implemented. So Linux, there will be the guy name is Torvald, I guess. Yeah, Linux Torvalds. So based on his name, this operating system has been developed. So there is a kernel here, the Linux kernel, which is open source. So what is the meaning of open source? Open source is like you can see the code. Let's assume you wrote a code. Okay, you wrote a program. Uh, you can see the actual code, not only the final end output. So you can take the original code and you can use it for your local purpose or business purpose based on the whatever the license they provided. Okay. So yeah, this is the one as I told next Torvados. So if I see there is a license here. Yeah. So there is a general purpose public license. So there are multiple different type of licenses. So one is where you can go ahead and take and use it however you want, or you can use it for only your personal purpose. Not you should not make money from it. So this is where you will find this Linux kernel, and it started in way back in 1990s. Okay. So it started in 1990s and all, and it kept on improving. So many people do the contribute to the source code every time. So what do you mean by kernel here is like kernel is your basic schema. So with the kernel, you can develop the operating system on top of it. Okay. So that one would be. So the most popular one we have is Ubuntu. So I think there is a company called Canonical. So their company basically takes this take this Linux kernel and they do develop it further. Okay. So, yeah, if anyone has any question here, you can raise my.
ఆ? పాములా పెట్టానా ఎక్కడమ్మా పాములా పెట్టానా
Yeah. Anyone else, Yuva or Hussein, anyone you have any questions here till now?
No, that it's clear. You can
Yeah.
continue.
Okay. So as I told, it's a product. It's like you wrote a code. Okay. You wrote your code and you did an open source license. So with that license, the company started adopting it. Okay. So there are like multiple Linux operating systems. So you would have heard Arch Linux. So that's also a different one. But let me tell you, like if I see the Linux operating system list of operating system, there are like so many. Okay, it's like you can take yourself one Linux operating system and you can develop it on your own. So there is something called Oracle Linux where they adapted for their Oracle system, the database system and all. Okay, so coming back, we have Canonical. The company name is Canonical. So they are managing the Ubuntu as a open source licenses, and they do publish the every time the releases and all. So I guess right now it's 24.02. We have Red Hat. So now Red Hat has been acquired by IBM. So Red Hat provides this one. So what they did, they provide the premium licenses. So is it like, yeah, just so it's like what to say. Um, they take the same kernel and they develop the Linux, Red Hat Linux on top of it. There's a couple of changes where Ubuntu uses APT and this one uses Yum. Okay, so what Red Hat did is, so the operating system has something called patches. Okay. So any software product, you need to continue release the maintenance patches. Okay. So that one will be here. So if you see, there is a Linux kernel continuously being developed, but it's not customer centric as in it's like you have to bear your own thing. So it's an open source. So let's assume you gave a bug. Okay. So let's assume you provided a bug report. Okay, there is some issue in this one, or there is some security patch needs to be developed and all. So what happens is it has to go through the list of the maintenance. Okay, so yeah, the bugs has been reported. So what happens is there would be people who submits the pull request. Okay, so it's like okay, you created this bug, so I'll submit a change to clear that bug or to take care of that bug. Okay, so that's called pull request, right? And there is someone called maintainers.
Uh, that's so.
Ah,
Sorry for the interruption. Someone is asking to zoom the write letters. What are you writing? So there would be legible.
yeah, fine, right?
Yeah, it's fine now. Thank you.
So yeah, this is the flow. So and guess what? Even Android also somewhat dependent on the Linux. Okay. Yeah. So what happens is, so people do report the bugs, or there should be security bugs has been reported. Okay, that should be reported. So there is a list of things where the things will come as a pull request. Multiple people will submit the pull request. If you see here, like there's multiple people submitted the pull request, and if you see 617 bugs has been closed. Okay, till now. This has to go through list of maintainers because they will review each and every pull request, what action it is does, and what type of security implication does it come with. Okay, so this all process takes some time. And let's say if I'm a corporate user, if I'm using open source version of Linux, I'm concerned about my security. Boss, the security patch I'm little concerned about and all. So that's where the Red Hat RHEL team, they came up, the Red Hat team, they came up with a solution that we will provide you a premium product. You have to pay for license. Okay. The license would be per host. Okay. So just like you have Windows, right? For every Windows operating, for every Windows machine, you have a license. So you're gonna pay for the license cost. So similarly, even Red Hat also providing that license thing for every host machine. So let's assume you are using 100 machines. Okay, so you have to take 100 licenses. And what happens is they will take care of the making sure it is into the latest version, making sure they are taking care of the bugs and all. And what happens?
Mm.
Yeah, the source Linux kernel, let's assume it's in some version. Okay. So what happens is all these people, they will implement the similar things to their own version. Okay. So this whole process takes some time. So that's why some of the people, they do prefer Red Hat. They are ready to pay the cost and they are ready to uh, like make sure it's in a stable version and all. So that's why people go for Red Hat. And there is something called CentOS. Okay. And yeah. So the Red Hat is a premium version, but let's assume people wanted something like a free version of that. So there is something called CentOS, but the Red Hat team told like, boss, we are not supporting CentOS any longer until CentOS 8. After that, they are not supporting. So now people are looking for Rocky Linux, or there is something called CentOS Stream. Yeah, CentOS Stream 8, 9. In a nutshell, if I do compare, like you have something called Android, right? Okay. So the original stock Android, it's in some version. Okay. What happens? All these Samsung, OnePlus, all the companies, they will adopt the original Android and they will slowly update the process and then they will push the patches to the users, right? So it's the similar thing. There are multiple Linux operating systems. So the original Linux kernel has been written by Linus. So yes. Yeah, and these companies or these organizations, whoever maintains it, right? So they will slowly adapt the patches. Uh, if there is a question that, hey, can I write my own operating system and can I take care of it? Yes, you. It comes with a cost, something called maintenance. So you have to make sure the security or other latest patches and all, right? So that part you have to take care of that maintenance part. So yeah, till now, any questions, guys? Or is it okay?
Yeah, it is fine, Dattu.
Yeah, so that's the difference. Like you might have heard, like we are using Ubuntu. Some people are using Red Hat. So why it is? So that is the reason. There are some companies who still using Unix and Sun Solars. So that's due to maybe their application is still supporting that. Yeah, that's completely fine. So next is something called Linux boot process. Okay. Yeah, is it like mandatory to know all these things? It's good to know if you are working in the SysOps side. It's good to know the Linux basics. Okay, so this is where it started and this is how it's going and all. Yeah, the BIOS is a common thing. Even for Windows, we do have BIOS. So we have something called BIOS chip in your laptops. So laptops or whatever servers. So what it does is it's do the basic input output system. So what happens exactly? Let's assume you have this list of peripherals, right? So you have a monitor, you have a input keyboard and all other things, and whatever the hardware device is supposed to load. Let's assume you have a disk. Okay, the disk needs to be something like a boot disk needs to be there. Okay, so that's a mandatory thing, right? So you're supposed to have a boot disk with operating system. So the BIOS will make sure to check all these things, okay, and then executes into the this one MBR. So MBR is something called master boot record. So master boot record. So what it does is, so you have a, hard disk, right? So there is in the hard disk, like there is a partitioning and all other things. Okay, so let me show you. Yeah. So if you see, if you take a blank hard disk, let's assume you took the blank one and you install your operating system there. Okay. So what happens is you will divide into the partitions. Okay. Partition one, partition two, and all. So all these data, they will be stored in this all the metadata, right? So where is my partition? What is my partition size? What is my file system type and all? So it will get stored in this master boot record. So that's what it's more of partition data. So this is where let's assume your disk got corrupted. Okay, some of the hard disk they got some hardware issue or some file system got corrupted. So your operating system will halt here the loading, right? The OS loading. So it will stop here. And as I told earlier, if you have a total issue with the boot disk or some other hardware component got failed, some RAM got failed and all, so you will have issue over here. So this is the two stages. This is called grub. Just a second. So grub is where, so let's assume you have multiple kernels have been loaded, okay, or multiple operating systems has been loaded here. Okay, let's assume you install a Windows and you install Linux as well, or install Linux, multiple Linux operating systems and all. So you can choose the operating system kernels here, okay, and also sometimes you might want to run it in the root mode, okay. So that part you can run in the grub. So there is a grub loader to which takes care of this. So for it, it has a configuration file. So there we can see all these things. Okay. And yeah, these parts have been, it's been really long time I touched it. Okay. So I'll just go explain these things for now. So yeah, from the grub, right, the kernel executes the init program. So it's basically loading the kernel. So that what happens in this mode. And the next one is init. So init makes sure to load the any NFS mounts or single user mode, all other things. So that will come in the init one. And the last one is the run levels. So run levels are where, let's say you have services, right? So yeah, you have Linux default services, right? So all the default services will be loaded here. Okay, something like Nginx, something like cron, something like SSH, right? Which were kept in auto start. So those things will come over here. So I went in a basic level over here, but yeah, you have any questions, you can. Okay, I can move on, right? Is it okay?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. Okay. So before moving further, so let's say how I can set up my own Linux system, or do I need to spin up AWS every time? So
Dattu, ఇది
uh,
AWS.
లేదు, no, no.
Okay, okay, fine.
Yeah, I'll tell you why AWS also comes into picture. So yeah, so yeah, if we want to use any Linux system, right? So in our laptop, if we want to run, so we need to use this one, something called VirtualBox. So this is how it looks. Yeah, before this goes on, so we used to have VMware Workstation earlier. I'm not sure if they deprecated it. Okay. Yeah, Workstation Pro now available for free use. Okay.
Dattu, just explain why we use virtual level.
శంకర్ ఏంటది చెప్పు మళ్ళీ ఒకసారి.
వర్చువల్ బాక్స్
Sure.
అదే ఎందుకు యూస్ చేస్తాం బేసిక్
Yeah,
గా?
yeah. Sure. Yeah, I think I need to take subscription here. Okay. So, or I need to log in and all. So I'll check this one. Okay. Uh, so there is something called virtualization. Okay. So that sits like this. So you have hardware and you have an operating system. Okay. So there is a concept of virtualization where on top of your hardware, okay, so we can run a virtual OS. So what do you mean by virtual OS? So if whatever this laptop is there, so this is a Windows one. Okay. So if I open the device manager, so this is all Windows thing. So I cannot see multiple operating systems here. So if I go to, so this is the same thing. So we have hardware, we have operating system, we have applications. So we have something called virtualization layer comes in. So on top of that, we will run our applications. Okay. So that would be, Okay, so sometimes we need to enable this virtualization in our laptop. Okay, so virtualization BIOS options. Yeah, so this is the one. Usually most of the times it's in a disabled state. So I do not sure if my laptop has it. So what we are supposed to do is like in case if it's not enabled, we can go and enable it. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll just check if my laptop has it. Okay. Yeah, system info, task manager, CPU section. Will not be. Yeah, one second. Yeah. So this is where you'll get to know whether the virtualization is enabled or not. Okay. So I don't have magnifier, but yeah, this is where it's there. So if it's not showing up enabled, then you might need to recheck. Okay. So how to enable it and all. So other than this, uh, so what we can do, okay, if we want to go ahead. So what we can do is we can take the operating system and we can install in our laptop, okay. But usually we are preferring Windows, right? So instead of that, we can install Linux also on top of it, so that every time when you boot in, it will ask whether you want to choose the Windows one and a Linux one and all. So usually we don't want to mess up the things. So that's the reason we prefer the virtualization. Okay. Um, Recently, Windows launched something called Windows Subsystem for Linux. Okay. So I'll see if I can enable it. Okay. Yeah, I'll come back to that one, boss. So the WSL, right? So I'll come back. So this is how it looks, our virtual box. Okay. So I'm gonna add a new Ubuntu. So what we are supposed to do is we need to select the ISO image. Okay. So right now I don't have one. Uh, so it's giving multiple options. Yeah, the guest OS needs to be installed manually. So only does the settings part. So I need to bring up the operating system. So whatever the RAM I have, let's say this laptop has 16 GB RAM. So right now it's asking, okay, how much RAM you want to allocate? So you want to allocate 3 GB or 4 GB. So ideally 2 GB should be fine, but we can go ahead and further and we can assign how many CPU cores we want. Okay. And this is your virtual hard disk. Okay. So it will be isolated from your original hard disk. Okay. So we can create a virtual hard disk here, how much size we want. So usually 20 GB is preferable. So yeah, I have my configuration created, but the problem is I don't have the ISO is not there. Okay. So
Datu, is it similar with AWS or Azure virtual machine setup?
no, I'll tell you that. Okay. So yeah, if we see this one, right, it's 5.9 GB. Okay. So man, everything is big. Personal use. Okay. So provide me small ISO image for Ubuntu set up in VirtualBox. Yeah, so you have something called Ubuntu minimal. So I'll take that one. Yeah, all these are taking time. So I'll try this one. Okay. So yeah, only if I have IS4, right? So I can go ahead and install. Okay. Earlier time we used to have Windows IS4 disk. So even now we have, most of the times it's coming with the manufacturer itself. But if we want to install any operating system, we need specific the ISO image of it. Okay. ISO image as in the operating system image. So Shankar asked a query. Okay. So what's happened with AWS, right? So AWS is also something similar. So here my laptop has 16 GB memory. Okay. Something like I think it's Intel i9 13 gen. So it has some number of cores, right? So it's taking the data from there. Yeah, it's able to share the resources. Okay. So similarly, what happens with AWS is AWS has a big data center. Okay. In the data center, we have multiple servers. Okay. So sometimes each server will have 64 GB. Sometimes it will have 1 TB, 1 petabyte of space and all. So those are two big servers, hardware servers, which were hosted there. Okay. And what we need a virtual operating system, right? So in AWS, whenever we are launching an operating system, so what exactly happens is it will launch in one of the servers in AWS. Okay. And the server space has been shared. Okay. So each server can host into multiple operating systems. That would be like, okay, I'm not able to show the sharing part, but let me show. So, and this is called hypervisor. Okay. All this data center, whatever the server, it is called hypervisor. So each hypervisor can host multiple operating systems. So sometimes what happens is your day operating system or the, let's say, uh, here it's called VM, right? The EC2 instance, right? So this instance can go and sit here also. Okay. Yeah, you won't get to know. Okay, because where your server is hosted, where and all it's going and all, you will never get to know. Okay, so only thing is, your virtual VM, virtual machine has been created in AWS, and in the data center they have the big server capacities. So you are sharing some of the resources for your VM, and there is sometimes where they will switch between the multiple hypervisors. Okay, so let's say if the server got full, this hypervisor got full. Okay, so they will move to the different one. That's where there is possible interruptions comes up. So that's why they have something called forgot the name, spot instances. Okay, so here is somewhere there is some concept of license as well. Okay, let's assume you have, so you have a dedicated license for your hardware, right? So that time what they will do, they will spin up a server only for yourself. Okay, so dedicated servers they call.
That too. How
Chapman.
do we get to know that server storage is full?
Inside the Linux?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Or if you are talking about this hypervisor servers, hmm, and you said the server is full, then automatically it will pick the spot instance, right?
No, no, not like that. Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'll show you. Yeah, so as I told, these are AMIs. So AMIs are something like, you can consider something like a the Amazon Mission Images, right? So they are basically specifying that, okay, these are the ISOs which we have. We can load your operating systems. Okay. So if we see, as I told, we have multiple Linux systems. So usually we go for the Ubuntu one. Okay. I can pick up Amazon Linux as well. So that's completely fine. Yeah, these all things, like let's not focus on this. So we were looking for only the how the AWS provides the virtual OS for us. Okay, how the AWS provides the server provisioning for us. Okay, so yeah, so this is where it's there, man. So if you want higher bandwidth, right, network bandwidth or higher EBS bandwidth, so if you select this option here, okay, so the AWS will make sure your instance will sit in the proper higher bandwidth related hypervisor, okay, and you have placement groups. Okay, this is a cluster group. I'm not sure of that one. So they bought a new concept called capacity blocks. So I'll come back to that one. So we have something called spot instances. So what happens is spot instances where uh, your application is not something mission critical. Okay. So is it okay? It's okay if your application goes down. So it's like less impacting applications. Okay. So something like you're doing a batch processing in the background. So that's where you do need the spot instances. So you're okay that, okay, if my instance got shut down and started back, I don't have any problem. So that's the time people go for spot instances. And the spot instances, it's like it will give a dynamic one. Okay. So sometimes it will be on this hypervisor. Sometimes the hypervisor might change. Okay. The altogether in one data center, there could be multiple hypervisors, right? So it can sit, make sure it will sit on the another one. Okay. So yeah, and one other thing is they bought something called capacity block here. Reserve reason feature short during. Okay. So capacity blocks are for your machine learning things. So let's assume you wanted a higher capacity related thing. So that's where these capacity blocks are coming in, and you can reserve the duration. Okay, so I want higher capacity for this many days and all. Let's assume you're running a mission, the ML models, that's where it will take a lot of resources and all. So we can use this one, like, okay, this many days I'm reserving my capacity. So what happens is AWS provides a discount. They will give you a discount if you do the commitment. Okay. Like, let's say you told like, hey, I gonna run 250 instances. Okay. 250 for 1 year. So, and they will specify it should be some T2 micro or it should be minimum instances. Okay. Minimum hardware requirement. So if you do this commitment with the AWS, the AWS support team, so they will provide you a discount. Okay. It's like, okay, for 1 year, we are providing you this discount because you did the committed usage. Okay. That must be there here somewhere. And yeah, Shankar, that's about the spot instances, man. You have like low
Hmm.
risk and all.
Okay.
That's where
Yeah.
spot instances comes in.
Hmm.
Yeah, they got something called capacity reservation. This is very new. And yeah.
I think these are all new technologies, I guess. When I learned AWS, I didn't come across these technologies.
Hmm.
2018.
Okay. Yeah. So this
Hmm.
is where tenancy is there, man. Yeah. If you see the options, right, let me zoom it for you.
We can see.
Yeah. So if you see the options, so we have something called run a shared hardware instance. That's the default one. So usually your VM will run in a shared instance. In the meaning is it's running on a shared laptop. Okay. So you have one laptop kept in your lab. Okay. Or one server kept in your lab. So you are all the multiple people, they are running operating system on top of it. Okay. So sometimes we have something called dedicated instance. We have something called dedicated host. Okay. Dedicated tenancy, single tenant, dedicated hardware. Okay, so dedicated instance is somewhere you get hardware somewhere else. Yeah, so dedicated instance is where the meaning is. So let's say if your instance has been stopped here, so the next time they will provide you the placement over here. So, but no one is going to use your instance till that time. Dedicated host is where you are hard coding your host that this is my host. So I'm not going to provision anyone else should not supposed to run anything on my host. Okay. So you are basically locking down your hardware for yourself. So that's where the this dedicated thing comes up. That is in tenancy, right? Yeah. Yeah. And it will come with additional cost. Why do you need this dedicated host or dedicated instances? So some of the softwares will come with a license. They will check your host. Okay, if this guy is changing the host every time, the license might not work properly. So you might want to run only on one specific hardware every time, so that you won't get license issues. So yeah, that's about it. Yeah, man, I should have downloaded this one. Okay. So the next time I will do that, the ISO image and how to load that one, right? So I'll do this one next time. The virtual
No
box.
problem.
Yeah. We have something called WSL. So this was bought recently by Windows. Right now we are not using for corporate thing and all, but you can go ahead and use it. Okay. So that's let me know if you can see it. Okay.
Yeah, we can see.
So by default, it will come with your Windows. If not, you can just run an update in your App Store. Okay. So this is where you can get the any operating system from here. Okay. So the steps for enabling this, okay, enabling WSL in Windows. Yeah, this is the one. So if I run the WSL install, so it will go ahead and do it. Just for our sake, I'll go ahead and run it. So I have some here, W here. I'm gonna run it. Yeah, I'll close it in another 5 minutes, man. So yes, we are crossing the 1 hour window. So we'll close it in another 5 minutes. So the next session, maybe if it's okay, I'll plan on weekdays. Otherwise, we have to go for weekends. Yeah, the next session, I'm looking for like how to set up that virtual box thing and how to, yeah, set up this. Yeah, so the next session I'll set up like that operating system in the virtual box and how to connect to that with using PuTTY. And maybe I'll take couple of operating systems, not only one. So maybe one or two I'll take.
Hmm.
And there is a snapshot maintenance and all other things are there. So I'll show you that. Yeah, that's about it. So I'll get this one installed. It's like for your own local testing. Okay. Let's say if you want to, you don't want to spin up in AWS. Okay. You don't want to use the virtual box. So you can use this one, the WSL. And how WSL works, it's on same layer.
Datu, are you going to explain about Linux commands as well?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Hmm?
But this
Hmm.
one is basics, right? Like the family, the boot process, right?
Uh-huh.
I
Hmm.
started this. So after that, I'll explain about the Linux commands. So if you are looking for a particular one, let me know.
Yeah. Share me this document.
Sure. Yeah. So Ubuntu has been installed. So what I'll do, I'll run a command Ubuntu. I got a window here. Nice. Yeah, new Unix name. So the two. Yeah. So we have a Linux terminal. We can run some commands. We can run, like, we can create the users. We can set up the SSH on top of it. Okay. So this is also, as I told, this is running whatever the Windows operating system is there on top of it. It's a layer. It's an application layer. So that's where this WSL is running. So if you want, you don't need to go to cloud every time, but you can take any of these options. So yeah, I'll conclude it here, man. Any questions you can ask?
Begitu. Ya, sama.
Okay, I'll close it here for now. Thank you everyone for joining. We'll see
Yep.
you again.
Hmm.
శంకర్ ఓకేనా రేపు జాయిన్ రేపు పెట్టచ్చా పర్లేదా